first question is, I'm sure you haven't gotten it ever, is just how did you get involved with this project? What attracted you to Kashmir?
Sure. What attracted me was the music. I was in my office listening to NPR, National Public Radio, and this incredible music came on, this huge wall of funk sound, and I just assumed it was a great band from the 70s, and the reporter came on and said, I know you think this is the JBs, but this is actually 15, 16, 17-year-old high school music students from Houston, Texas, circa 1972, the Kashmir Stage Band. And here's their professor, their band leader. He's 90 years old, Conrad Prof Johnson. Prof comes on the radio and he starts telling the story. And as he's telling the story of the challenges that the band faced, being the only black band in an all-white competition circuit at a time when, black bands were not invited to perform, that was historic enough, but just then all the music that they recorded and all that stuff, I just got chills. And I said, I think somebody should be telling this story. So I just jumped online and I Googled, every Conrad Johnson in Houston I could find, and I called the first one I got, and I said, he picked up the phone. I said, I think I just heard you on the radio. And he said, oh no, you heard my dad. And I said, oh man. He said, but I said, well, I'm a filmmaker from Los Angeles, and I'd love to talk to your dad about this story. And he said, well, here's his number. He gives me his phone number, and I was like, okay, now I've got his number. So I was a little bit flipped out, and I waited a week to do anything, and then I finally got up, the courage to call him, and when he picked up the phone, he said, who is it? I said, Prof, it's Mark Landsman, the filmmaker from LA. He said, man, what is your problem? I've been waiting all week for your call.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, really? So then I just got on a plane, went to Houston, talked to him, and I told him sort of where I was coming from, and he entrusted us to tell the story.
Wow, well, you did a great job with it.
Thanks.
How long did it take to film? Was it over a couple years since you were so thorough with the background of the band and the Prof, and
Cool.
How long did it take to do that?
Well, let's see, the whole process from meeting Prof to sitting with you here has been about 2 years.
Okay.
And the first bit of opportunity that we had to film was Prof's 92nd birthday. Yeah, so we went down and we were invited by his family to attend a barbecue in his honor, 92nd birthday, a whole family reunion, so 70 of his family members were there, and that was just a total privilege to meet not only his children, but his children's children and his children's children's children. So his great-grandchildren are there, and that was just awesome. And then, pretty soon after that, we found out that this reunion was going to start to happen, and we all told, the filming was about 6 weeks if you added it all up. But then we did a lot of archival research. And,
I was wondering about that, because in the film you use a lot of shots that look like they're from the 70s. How were you able to obtain that?
Well, this was the thing. I mean, when my editor and I started, we were like, what are we going to do? There's no footage on this. I mean, first of all, there's very little footage on high school stage bands, period. But then, this kind of relatively unknown band from Houston, Texas, we just called everywhere we possibly could, and we put the word out. And actually, one of our PAs called me one day and said, hey man, this cameraman that I work with, he was Texas-based, he said, he thinks he might have a 30-minute documentary called Prof and the Band that was shot in 1972-73 by a very famous black reporter at the time named Charles Porter. And I was like, oh my God. So we found out that this film existed, and we called up Charles, and Charles knew of Prof, obviously, and basically back in 1972-73, he followed the band for a period of about 2 months as they were preparing to go to Europe.
Wow.
And he filmed this all on 16. So it had this great, it was preserved, it was amazing quality.
Yeah, it was astounding
and
how the quality, wow.
He gave it to us.
That's really cool.
He's not, he's here. Thank you, Charles Porter. Yeah, he actually got to see the film on Saturday. He was in the house.
Oh, really?
Which was amazing, And so, I mean, people like that are just heroes in terms of documentary filmmaking. People who just, they don't know why they're doing something, but they recognize that history is happening. They feel like they've got to pick up a camera and document it. Because his editor at the time, the guy who sat on the news desk, said, "Oh, that's not an important story. Who cares?" Basically, like, who's gonna care about this like black high school in Houston, like. And so basically he told him, no, well, Charles just got the camera and did it anyways.
Wow.
And, and then, 35 years later, handed the footage over to us, and that formed, we used like almost every frame of it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was
That's
great,
amazing.
Great stuff. So
One of the things I noticed was, well, Prof talks about this in the film, was just how important music as education is, just for people even developing. Was that something that you wanted to focus on in the film, like just to stress the importance of it, or?
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, I started out my career teaching filmmaking in the public schools in New York City. I taught in a predominantly Dominican neighborhood in Washington Heights, and then a predominantly Puerto Rican Dominican neighborhood in the East Side, in the Village. You know, and I saw at that time what a kind of discrepancy there was between schools with a lot of resources and schools with few resources, and the fact that the arts were one of the first things that would go. You know, and to me that's a crime. You know, because art education, music education is an essential part of a holistic education for any kid. You know, and if you happen to have grown up in a privileged, you know, area, privilege meaning like you had an art teacher, you know, you had a music teacher if you wanted, there was a band, you know, and then to realize that there are so many schools in this country that don't have that, you know, and what Prof said, you know, back in the day was, you know, music education is going to affect every other thing that a kid is going to do in this school, and he was right. You know, when the Kashmir Stage Band started to thrive, it had a ripple effect on the entire school. So suddenly grades started going up, and college acceptances. You know, their sports teams started. Everything started to excel. You know, and so it just tells you like the power of music in a school to change the culture of a school, instill kids with self-esteem, give them a sense of presence. You know. Give them a sense of timing. I mean, there's mathematics in music. You know, you can't be a great musician and not understand timing and counting. You know, that's math. You know, then there's, you know, and music is a language, and so it feeds into, it's an essential part of education, and we have to preserve it. And you know, that's why part of why we made the film is that we want champions, we want arts advocates, music advocates to say, okay, like keep music education in the schools. Like it's important.
Yeah. Yeah, well, actually, I was a band kid in high school, so like, yeah, obviously I agree. But
hide your band geek.
No, I was president my senior year. It's pretty bad. But so no, I could not agree more, and was really glad. Like when Prof said in the film, he's, you know, if you remove that from the school, you should be fired, and I could not agree more with that. And just it is very life changing, like you said. And I was going to ask next what you wanted people to get out of the film, but you kind of answered that in last question, just how music education is important. But was there anything else you want people to just take out from the film?
Yeah, I mean, I want people to just feel inspired when they walk out of that movie, feel full of life. You know, it's like you can be a musician, you don't have to be a musician, or even, well, you don't have to be a musician to love the movie and love the story. I mean, it's a great story. Prof was a hero, and just a beautiful human being, and a mentor. You know, and that's a universal story. You know, he changed people's lives.